Good Friday morning. It's good to have you with us for our First Alert 6 streaming. I'm Erin Hartley, joined just by meteorologist Jarrett Lansford, who's of course doing double duty today. Of course, we got some folks who are off today, but we're going to first alert you to some wintry mix that's going to be moving in as we get towards the afternoon, Jarrett.
Yeah, this is something we're going to be tracking pretty closely as we go through the rest of the day. And this has really kind of shown up over the last 48 hours. This is why we've started kind of over the last day or two really hitting this home. Let's take a look at where we're at now and where we're heading. If you're heading out the door this morning, you don't really have too much in the way of issues as far as the weather's concerned. For precip, it's chilly as you're stepping out. A lot of cloud cover as you're seeing on our Children's Nebraska cam. 26 degrees. There's a bit of a breeze too, so it feels like it's in the teens. So bundle up. Unfortunately, that's not really going to change all that much today. Temperatures are going to be kind of stuck in neutral all day long. The clouds won't go anywhere, and we'll start to add this on. That's some precip that's in central Nebraska. That will pull its way toward us as we get later toward the midday hours. We'll start to see that pick up in terms of kind of a shower approach. So on and off for that wintry mix that we end up with. Here's what it looks like in the morning. You can see it's pretty quiet. If you're in the Norfolk Columbus area, you likely start to get some of this closer to 9, 10 o'clock. And then that will continue to build toward the metro as we get toward about 1 p.m. And I think especially as we get into the mid to late afternoon is where we'll see a little bit more of this in coverage. But you kind of see how blotchy it is in the coverage there on the model. That's how it's going to look as it comes through. So off and on, it won't be continuous all afternoon and evening. You'll just have these rounds of the precip. Mainly falls as snow. However, we're going to be sitting right near that freezing mark, and we could occasionally see things change over to some sleet, some freezing drizzle as this makes its way through. That's where concern comes in for developing some slick spots as people are heading home. And you notice how we get toward 5, 6, 7 o'clock, it really fills in on the radar. That's where the concern comes in. So be ready for a coating that's on the road of some mixed precip that could result in some slick travel. A lot of people are going to be heading to Lincoln this evening for that big basketball game between undefeated Nebraska and Michigan State. A couple ranked teams there. So if you're doing that, be ready for conditions to be less than ideal as you're making that drive. We'll start to pull this precip out as we get beyond 10 p.m. and by midnight, it's off to the east and ending. So again, as far as how much snow we end up with, it's a coating that we see. Up to an inch, but likely for most of us closer to that thin coating that we end up with a couple of spots that have some iciness that is mixed in with that. So be careful if you're traveling in the afternoon. That's what you can expect. Now, thankfully, for the next couple days, it looks better. We get up into the 40s for Saturday and Sunday. That's above average. It'll be warmer. We'll get some sunshine back. We just need to make our way through what we end up with today, and then it'll get better.
Okay, and then looking ahead to Monday, a lot of people go back to work. All the kids go back to school. Are we kind of staying in this range of the forecast for early January?
It even gets better by the time we're heading back. We're looking at 50s on the way as we get into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So you may be dealing with some kids who don't want to go to the classroom because of how nice things end up being. What brings those changes is what you see right here on Sunday. Breezy. We'll get some gusts out of the south that will be pulling in some of that warmer air. Saturday we'll have a little bit of a breeze that'll be around, but it's mainly Sunday that picks up. And we'll get some gusts that are up around 30 miles per hour on Sunday. With cloud cover, that does mean Sunday's 46-degree high will feel a little cooler than that, so first alert to that. But this will long-term help us out. Let me show you what it looks like on the 10-day forecast. 53 with sunshine for Monday, less wind around too. 50s for Tuesday, Wednesday, even Thursday now, looking like we get into the 50s as we build a ridge into the middle of the country. And you notice the nighttime temperatures are around freezing. Very warm for January. We've been talking about this system that makes its way into the middle of the country by the time we get to the end of the forecast. Now, I'm going to talk a little more in detail about what to expect with that based on what I'm seeing right now, but it is trending a little later with its arrival. So that does give us that nicer Thursday. Looks like Friday may even be a little on the drier side. So we'll keep an eye on that, keep you posted as that gets more into focus.
For early mid to January, those temperatures, not too bad.
All right, 2026.
All right, I know. All right, let's get an update on traffic conditions, of course, this morning. How are the roads looking?
It's been pretty quiet. We did briefly have one crash, and I want to update on that one. That's the North Freeway right near Hamilton. This was over on the right-hand side of the road, over on the shoulder. But when you're looking here on the camera, you can see that everything seems to be moving through in pretty good shape. That crash appears to have cleared. So good news for anyone who's heading through that stretch that you won't have to deal with that anymore. And you can see no real delays that are showing up in that interchange. So good news that you have there, and really throughout much of the metro, there's not much in the way of problems. It's, of course, still winter break. You don't have the kids that are on the road for going to school. You don't have a lot of people going to the office still. A lot of people take this day off. So you are looking at things going pretty well in the early going. Now, of course, if we do have things start to develop and become an issue, we'll first alert you to that. A couple spots on Maple that are just a little slow, but mainly moving along pretty well in the early going. This map may look a lot different by the time we get to the afternoon and the evening and add in that precip. So another thing that we'll be tracking as that moves in, and we'll of course keep you posted with any problems as they do develop.
All right, sure will. Jared, thank you very much. Back to news now to a cutting that sent a man to the hospital. Omaha police were called near 24th and Pratt just after 1:30 Thursday morning. There they found the victim outside of his home. The victim told police the suspects broke into his home and assaulted him. This investigation is ongoing. Anybody with any information is urged to contact Crime Stoppers. Happening today, Brenda Bogatz, the woman arrested in connection to a homicide and the death of her husband, will be in court. Monday, officers were called to a home near 84th and Lakeview Drive for a wellness check when they found 76-year-old Donald Bogatz dead inside of his home. She's expected to be in court this afternoon at 12:30. Well, Douglas County deputies say that 2 teens were hurt. One is now booked for allegedly trying to run a vehicle off the road and threatening people with a fake gun. The sheriff's office says this all started when a group of teens got into an argument at a house party. 4 of those teens left the party in a pickup. Investigators say that 2 other teens got into a Honda Accord and chased after them. At one point, the driver of the Accord, a 17-year-old, allegedly pointed what investigators later found out to be a fake gun at the pickup. Eventually, both cars crashed into a ditch near 180th and Ida. The 17-year-old driver, Accord driver, was later booked for terroristic threats and assault. Still ahead, the minimum wage is going up in Nebraska. How this could lead to tough choices for some local businesses. Plus, another look at the forecast when we come back. Welcome back on our First Alert 6 streaming, taking a live look outside, overlooking the downtown Omaha skyline. It should be a nice weekend ahead for us. We just got to get through today's forecast. Jarrett, what should people know?
Well, it's kind of looking murky out there on that camera.
It
We've
is.
got plenty of low clouds that are in place. We've tried to get a little bit of some fog to develop as well. Thankfully, we've kept that at bay. Don't be caught off guard if you maybe see a couple of flakes in the morning. That's not the main thing you need to worry about today. It's what happens as we get into the afternoon and evening as we start to bring in a light wintry mix into the area. And though a lot of that falls as snow, the way our atmosphere is kind of composed right now with the temperatures, we could be bouncing around different types of precip. So that means some sleet, some freezing drizzle, and that's where we could get some scattered slick spots that develop as we get into afternoon and evening travels. First alert to that. Again, does look a lot better as we get beyond today, but we just have to get through what is on the way here. So there you can see the pinks that are showing up off to our west and central Nebraska. That will move off to the east as the day goes on. You can kind of see it filling in a little bit as it makes its way east. I expect that happens in our area as well. So this morning it's mostly just cloud cover, cold. It's not really going to warm up much today. We're in the mid-20s. We'll end up just over 30 degrees for our highs. So bundle up if you're heading out, and then here comes the precip. And we'll start to see some of that a little bit more so about 1 p.m. in the metro, and especially as we get into the mid to late afternoon. That's where we'll really fill in the radar, and we'll be looking at some of that mix happening in the metro in the form of kind of a shower pattern. So it will be happening, and then it'll shut off for a little bit, and then it'll happen again. And then by the time we get to about 6, 7 p.m., you can see that we're really filling in the radar, and it gets a little more consistent at that point. Again, mostly as snow, but may see a bit of a mixture at times alongside this. So be prepared for travel that does get impacted as we get later in the day and see that fill in the metro. As we get past about 10 p.m., we start to push that off to the east, and we make our way toward that nicer rest of the weekend. A coating of snow possible. Again, that is going to be kind of that unpleasant coating that we have, because it will be bouncing around with type, so it won't be as easy to clean off. It could be slick with some of those icy conditions at times. So that's what you need to prepare for as we head through the PM hours today. As we get to tomorrow, we'll clear away the clouds. We'll end up in the 40s. We'll keep the 40s around for Sunday. Saturday's now trending toward being the nicer day than Sunday, and it's because of this wind and the cloud cover likely a little bit more stubborn and harder to shake. Show you the wind. We get a little bit of a breeze on Saturday, but it's not as strong as what we see on Sunday, where we get some gusts that are up to about 30 miles per hour out of the south. Now, long term, that helps us out. On Sunday itself, with those clouds, it'll make it feel a little cooler than the mid-40s that we'll actually have in place. Let me show you the long-term trend, though. That's looking pretty nice, right? Some mid-50s by the time we get to Tuesday. We're in the first week of January here, and we're talking mid-50s for highs. So that would start to put us not quite to record territory, but at least in the ballpark. A lot of our records for this stretch would be in the 60s. Tuesdays is 59 degrees. So that's what we're looking at, and it's because of this ridge that builds through the middle of the country and gives us those more mild conditions that are going to be in place. So enjoy that, because it looks like that's actually going to stick around all the way until we get to about Thursday or so with those warmer temperatures. So that leads to a pretty nice first full week of January for us. So when I show you the 10-day forecast, you're going to notice how we're just heading up with those temperatures as we head to the beginning of next week. We're also looking at a lot of sunshine for Monday. That's going to be such a nice day for us, and that continues for a couple days there as we are getting into that work week.
2026 is really treating us quite well, Jarrett. We're hoping that'll last into the 10-day, right?
Yeah, it goes for most of the 10-day, and we've been first alerting you to that storm system that's just kind of been lurking at the end of the 10-day without too much specifics. That does seem like it's pushing a little bit later. So Thursday looks dry. Friday may be the beginning of some precip making its way in, and you do notice it looks colder once that moves in for next weekend. So, of course, as we get a little closer to next weekend, those details will get a little more refined, but that's the time frame where maybe we start to flip the switch and go back to reality a little bit.
I have a feeling we're in for it very soon.
I hope not, but we got plenty of winter left. I'm sure it'll become.
I don't want to put that energy out there, so I'll retract that. But
how about those 50s?
How about those 50s?
That's going to be great.
We won't complain. We'll just enjoy.
Yes.
All right, Jared, thank you. Well, 3 men are now starting the new year behind bars. They're accused of stealing cable underneath the Blondo Street Bridge near 117th on New Year's Eve. An Omaha police report says a CenturyLink worker saw 3 men on camera underneath that bridge with ladders and cutting tools. When police arrived, one of the men was cutting pipes with a saw. Sereno Canelia, Jerry Hall, and Mark Kurtz all were arrested. Their charges include theft. Nebraska's minimum wage now $15 an hour. A $1.50 difference might not sound like a lot, but for some small business owners, this could be a crisis. James Coven is the owner of Amazing Imaginarium in the Old Market. He says when his doors first opened, minimum wage was just $9. With that number nearly doubling over the years, he's facing some tough choices. He says staffing could be cut down or prices could be going up.
I have employees who've worked for me for years, who've worked their way up and have earned, that's the key word, is earned $16, $17 an hour. Well, now all of a sudden they're barely making more than basic person right off the street.
Well, Coven says that pay increase needs to equal experience, and that could mean less opportunities for younger job candidates. Starting in 2027, the minimum wage in Nebraska will go up every year based on the cost of living. We're less than a week away from Nebraska lawmakers returning back to Lincoln for the 2026 legislative session. And one of the big priorities is balancing the state's budget. The state faces a multi-million-dollar deficit. Our Lincoln sister station caught up with several lawmakers ahead of the session to hear their thoughts about the budget. Omaha Senator Kathleen Kauth tells them she believes in order to resolve the shortfall, the state needs to change what is taxed.
Time we give an exemption, we narrow our tax base. In this state, candy and pop are not taxed. And to me, those are wants, not needs. But we tax electricity. That is a need, not a want.
Well, during an event in Grand Island in early December, Governor Jim Pillen said affordability is still the priority, especially fixing what he called the prosperity tax crisis. Day one of the session is Wednesday, January 7th. Stay with us. More news after this. Welcome back. Well, most of us are familiar with the New Year's Eve ball drop in Times Square, of course, but over the past couple of decades, the trend of dropping things to the new year has kind of spread across the country.
And people have really gotten creative with it. You could find some of the displays a little more impressive than some other ones. Let's go off to the Northwest first. Idaho, state known for its potatoes, drop a giant spud.
Whoa!
Followed by a huge fireworks display in front of the state capitol in Boise. There they go.
Oh my gosh.
This is the 13th annual potato drop. That tradition started in 2013. That's a lot of fireworks there.
It is.
All right, now let's go to the southeast. Mount Olive, North Carolina. Crane lowering a pickle wrapped in lights into a giant pickle jar. The pickle drop became a tradition, 1999, but this year's pickle bigger than most because this year's drop also celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Mount Olive Pickle Company, of course, founded in the city back in 1926.
Wow.
Okay, one more. Let's go to Jackson, Mississippi. Fire truck lowering this sparkling crystal catfish.
Okay.
Complete with confetti during the countdown to the new year. The display an homage to the region's fishing industry. They certainly love their catfish down there.
Yeah.
Pretty cool, all the different options that people are doing around the country.
I wonder what Omaha would pick. Steaks?
Yeah, it's got to be steak, right?
Steak or corn?
Corn? Why not both? Just drop the whole meal
Someone?
down.
Hey,
right?
we just gave you an idea. All
Pretty
right.
cool.
We can try it.
All right. Also, with New Year's Day polar plunge in the Northwest could be one for the record books.
Yeah, thousands of people got into their bathing suits and jumped into the ice-cold water yesterday in Birch Bay, Washington. Take a look at this. They were hoping to break the Guinness World Record for the largest polar plunge ever recorded. Norway right now holds that record with just over 3,000 participants. There's a couple rules, like remaining waist deep in the frigid water for at least a full minute. The group is still waiting for official word from Guinness.
I hope they got it because, you go through all that, you're sitting in the water, and then you find out that you didn't get it.
Get it. Did all that for. It's always fun to see. This time of year, people do those polar plunges. It's kind of funny. Sometimes they'll do a fake one for pets. Pets jump into the water, but it's not actually freezing water. But
You remember like a couple of years ago they had like a viral one? I can't swim actually, so what I did is I just turned some ice cold water on and called that my polar plunge.
Jarrett, I appreciate you trying.
That works, right?
It works. All right, it's going to wrap up for us First Alert 6 streaming. We're going to get ready for our cut-in during the Today Show. You can watch it here or over the air. Have a great start to your Friday.
Live from WOWT, First Alert 6 starts now.
Time now 7:26 on this Friday morning. It is great to have you with us. I'm Erin Hartley. Let's get an update on traffic and your forecast with Jarrett Lansford.
Let's start with that traffic where we have a new crash that's really impacting things. First alert to this. This is as you're making your way in the interchange at the JFK and I-80. You're heading northbound there to go toward 480. That's where you're running into this issue. You can see the left lane blocked there. So watch for that. You need to stay right. Expect some delays that could be possible in that stretch. And there you can kind of see the yellow that's showing up through that interchange. So that icon should probably be a little bit closer to here. But that's what you're watching for that area. That's our only issue that we have at this point. Do watch for maybe a couple of slick spots that may develop with temperatures being below freezing and some moisture that is showing up on some of those roads. Later in the day, though, is where we have more problems. Let me first alert you to that, where we look at temperatures being cool right now, but cloud cover being in place and dry conditions. 26 where we stand, bit of a breeze, feels like the teens. That's not really going to change all day long. We'll only move a few degrees through the rest of the day, peak just over 30 degrees. But off to the west, notice that we're starting to fill the radar in. As we get toward the middle of the day, we'll bring in some wintry mix into the area. There's our current temperatures, but you can see how that fills in as we get toward about 1 p.m. and especially in the evening. The evening drive, we could be looking at some slick conditions. Most of this falls as snow, and we get a coating of that, but it could occasionally mix in some sleet, also some freezing drizzle, so that could affect travel as we get toward the later portions of the day. First alert to that. The rest of the weekend does look better once we move this out. Aaron.
This morning, a man was taken to the hospital with serious injuries after a cutting near 24th and Pratt. The victim told police suspects broke into his home and assaulted him. An investigation is ongoing. The time now 7:28. Back here in about 25 minutes with another update.